Allan Sarver. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Scott?
I'm good. I'm good. How many years have we known each other?
I'm going to guess it's been at least, it's more than 10. I know that.
Man,
Uh,
that's a long time to know someone.
It is.
And we still like each other. That's
Yeah,
even
well,
better.
yeah, well, that's sometimes that happens a lot. I only hang out with nice people, so that's probably the reason why.
It works out, yeah. So I've known you because I know you're, obviously we network together, and I know you as a fisherman. I also know you as a bankruptcy attorney.
That's correct.
You were obviously in court today because no one comes here with a suit and tie unless they were just in court. So tell us about yourself. Tell us what makes you tick, what kind of cases you like, that kind of thing.
As you know, I'm a bankruptcy lawyer, which means I represent, from my standpoint, I represent individuals and businesses in all aspects of bankruptcy. Today's matter involved representing secured creditors, which is what I spent my afternoon working on in a very interesting case where I'm trying to protect the interests of my client's security in real property, and the party who's obligated on the note keeps on transferring small interest to other parties who keep on filing bankruptcy. So it's chasing that case from one case to another case to another case to another case. And unfortunately, it happens a lot. But
that sounds like a nightmare.
no, not, I mean, sometimes it can be. It's more frustrating from the client than it is for me. But a lot of times, most of the time, the judges understand it. It's called a serial filer, and the judges understand it, and they get in front of it and they put an end to it. And that's hopefully what will happen in this particular case.
So this is great since you work by the hour. So the more time they push it back, the more time it is for you. So it could be worse, right?
But at the same time, we try to be fair to our clients and try to manage clients' expectations. And it's unfortunate that the client has to bear the financial burden of people who are just trying to avoid paying on an obligation or allow for the remedies that California law allows for to enforce rights under a note secured by deed of trust.
No, I totally get it. And to me, it's rare that I've ever seen the inside of a court. And the last time I had to deal with an attorney was when I was an expert witness. And I'm telling you, man, that was stressful. And so she kept on trying to. She was grilling me and preparing me for the other side, and I went like, "This is what I'm going to expect. This sucks. I'm glad I'm getting paid by the hour to have to endure this." It's not easy.
It can be difficult sitting in a witness box. I've done it a couple of times where I've testified as an expert witness. One time it was in a matter where, excuse me, because I left my speaker on the other computer. It was in a matter where I had been going at it with opposing counsel. And when the matter was over, we became friends. And he called me up one day and asked me if I would be his expert witness in a state court action that had bankruptcy ramifications. So, okay, I'll do that. This ought to be fun. But no, it can be, but it can also be, you're sitting there being attacked by the other side, and it never feels good to be attacked.
Yeah, I can't imagine you ever get used to it.
No, because I'm not an expert witness. I know plenty of people that are expert witnesses. They do it for a living. They love it, and they just do it all the time. So for them, it's fun.
Yeah. So I'm still deciding whether I want to continue or if I can maybe hit my flow with it, because it seems like after 20 years in the business, it's a great position for me to be in. But that being said, yeah, it was getting me a little bit stressed out, to be honest.
Well, but I guess
so tell us more about with the bankruptcy. I mean, how long have you been doing this? And what is the process for you when someone comes to you? I mean, is there like a checklist of how things go?
That really depends. And that sounds like a lawyer-like response, but it really does depend. First of all, I've been doing it for over 40 years. And it really depends on which client is coming to you and for what reason. If it's somebody who is unable to pay their debts and they're seeking to file bankruptcy to obtain a discharge or reorganize, that's a completely different set of questions and requests for information than someone who is a creditor in a bankruptcy case and is needing to have their interests protected. And so it really all depends upon the facts and circumstances of the given client. But either way, it's a
Got it.
matter of
Got it.
gathering all of the information, reviewing all of the documents relative to the claim or the debts in question, and trying my best to analyze the situation and come up with what, hopefully will be the best result for the client.
That makes a lot of sense. How often is real estate involved with your in your cases?
I represent a number of landlords and secured lenders in bankruptcy. And because of that, those types of cases come up a lot. I could be representing a landlord whose lease is in jeopardy of being accepted or rejected, or there's issues of the amount that's necessary to cure it if the reorganizing company is going to want to keep it or assign it to somebody else. And then there's the secured creditor that's not being paid on a loan that wants to be paid. So it 50, I'd say a good portion of the time, real estate is involved.
And so, do you have any real estate hell stories? Tell us about one of them that was just an absolute nightmare for you.
Well, I'll tell you about one, and I won't mention any names, but this one goes back a long, long time. I was representing a non-filing spouse in a case where one side filed bankruptcy, she did, and we ended up going through years of litigation and had the longest standing mediation in this particular judge's career. And he was, I was happy to hear that he actually used it as a teaching tool. But I distinctly remember the first morning of the mediation going into his courtrooms, in his office, into his chambers, and showing him pictures of how the tennis court, and you can only imagine what this would feel like as a real estate broker, had been painted like a Hawaiian scene with palm trees and, all kinds of fruit and pineapples and whatever it might have been, but completely destroyed it. And the mediation lasted for days. We ended up entering into a settlement agreement, which was never really implemented. Eventually, we tried to sell the house and the other side wouldn't cooperate. And I had no choice but to go into court to get a court order for the clerk of the court to sign off on the conveyance documents because the other owner refused to do so. And you can only imagine, we talked before about the expense to the client of having to go through all that. Well, that was a very good example of how expensive it can be when when the other side is just completely obstreperous and uncooperative. But
so how many of your cases actually
I'll say this one other part. When the judge saw the pictures of the tennis court, and then, of course, the additional paintings on the garage door of additional Hawaiian scenes, you could see the air just come right out of him because he knew what he was going to be in for the next couple of 2-3 days. But it was fun. We accomplished a lot, and eventually it all got resolved, even the divorce.
So how often do you, like, just approximately, how often do you go to court, and how often are you able to resolve without having to go to court?
Being a bankruptcy attorney, I think we understand the need for resolution, because we know that if things get liquidated at the end of the day, creditors don't get as much as they would get if they would maybe just settle. And also you have the issue of the costs associated with litigation. It's very expensive. So I think there's a different mindset in the bankruptcy court that seeks to promote mediation and settlement, as opposed to fully litigating something, which, if it's necessary, you do, but we talk a lot.
Do you find that most of the attorneys that you work with, are they usually pretty easy to work with and trying to figure out a balance or to settle somehow, or do you find that a lot of them are more confrontational?
I think it depends upon the case that you're involved with and who's on the other side and who you represent. So it's not a one answer. There's just it just depends upon who my client is, who the other side or what the other side is, and what they want. So there's not a yes or no response to that question.
Okay, but even if I push the issue a little bit, I can't get one out of you.
You're not going to get it.
I was just curious how, because
Everything is fact driven.
Yeah.
You know, every case has its own facts and circumstances, and it has to be looked at in that light. But you know, we try to talk to each other because it helps.
Hmm. That sure helps. When you said it was one of the longest mediations ever, I mean, how long is a long mediation?
We must have been back and forth to court there over a period of a couple of months, and I'm talking about being there, you know, a number of days in a row, because I remember distinctly this was before a Thanksgiving holiday, and we started on the second day before the actual the holiday. Let's say it was on a Thursday, so we started on a Tuesday, and on Wednesday night at 8:30 we were still in the courtroom. And it
Oh
went
my
on, and
gosh.
we draft documents, and we'd end up going back, and we draft more documents, and end up going back, and you know, you negotiate a deal, and then you negotiate the deal you just got through negotiating.
Hmm. Well, that sounds as stressful as can be to me.
More for the client.
Everything you're talking about sounds stressful.
Well, more for
Maybe
the
it's just
client than
me.
for me.
Most of my deals are a little bit more friendly.
Well, but I can imagine, you know, just looking at what you do, you've got, you know, you have expectations of, you know, depending if you're representing the seller who wants the most that they can get, or the buyer who wants to get the most for the least, and then you're just trying to make sure that the property's, you know, clean and there aren't any hidden issues and so
Mhm.
forth. And so you have a ton of stresses in your business. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely are. I think that the more long, I've been doing over 20 years, so it's a little different if I'm talking to someone and I'm talking to the other side and the other agent says, so they just removed contingency, let's say 3 days ago. They received their disclosures like 6 or 7 days ago, and then I get a call saying, wow, they didn't realize that someone had died in the unit, and I'm going like, it's in the ESD, it's in the disclosures, and your agent told you. And you removed all contingencies. Well, we might have to renegotiate. I said, that's a non-starter. I'm going to advise my client against that. You need to figure this out because your deposit is at risk. So figure this out because I don't see it as big as an issue. I don't want to fight, but the fact that they told you and it was disclosed and you removed contingencies, it seems pretty compelling that we're on the right side of this. And so I'm hoping that it'll turn out that he'll realize, you know what, it's not as big of a deal as he thought. People pass away all the time. We do estate sales all the time. It's really not as a big an issue as you think in real estate. But I thought that was kind of funny.
Well, did this person die of natural causes or were they murdered?
It was natural causes.
Okay.
And it rarely gets in the way of a deal unless there's certain communities that are a little more sensitive to it, and I get that. But in this case, I'm going like, look, this in the past year I've done maybe 10 or 15 of these, and where someone passed in there or they were in there in hospice or something, and it's just never an issue. There might be a handful of people that is, but so this guy's making an issue out of something, and he's, of course, he has a right to how he feels about it, but it was disclosed repeatedly, so we'll see which way he decides to go.
All right. Well, you know some good real estate lawyers if necessary.
Yeah, I know one or two. Yeah, that's what's great too about the people that we hang out with. Is very easy. I get answers very quickly.
That's the point.
So yeah, do you have another story you want to share? Another real estate help?
We talked earlier about, you know, the serial filer and the transferring of interest in property. I had one recently up in the Northern District of California. This was in Sacramento, where the company had been in a Chapter 11 for close to a year. They had tried to get a plan approved to satisfy my client's claim. Couldn't do it after multiple tries. Ultimately, the case gets dismissed. Okay, fine. So my client's going ahead with state court remedies and is going to foreclose. And then lo and behold, here comes the transfer of the property on the eve of the foreclosure to another entity. For no consideration, just, hey, here, just take a 2% interest in the property and now file bankruptcy without a lawyer. It's an LLC, and an entity can't file bankruptcy without a lawyer. And so I make a motion to the court, and before the motion can be heard, of course, the case gets dismissed. And then we reset for foreclosure sale, and then here comes the next bankruptcy. Well, this time the judge was a little upset, and I filed my papers with the court, and the court ordered everybody to appear. And of course, the people who were ordered to appear and explain why they were transferring the property and filing multiple times bankruptcy to stop the foreclosure sale didn't bother to show up. The judge gave me exactly the order that I wanted and then some. And there's special provisions under the bankruptcy code that if orders are recorded, that they can be binding against any future filings, depending upon the wording.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the order that I got. Well, we got ours recorded at 8:30 in the morning, and at 12:30 in the afternoon, here comes yet another bankruptcy. That one's too late. That one's too late. So it was a lot of work to get it done, but it got done. And now we're just seeing how we're going to deal with the occupants of the property. But it was just gamesmanship that people were playing without just coming to us and saying, look, this is what I'd really like to try to do. Will you work with me? It's sometimes easier just to come to the other side and say, I need help to do this. I want to do this. This is what I'm willing to do. And let's see if we can't work something out instead of playing the games. You play the games and people get upset. And my client got very upset, and thus the end result.
Right. Then everything escalates, and then it just causes more problems. That's why I like, the mediation and arbitration that we have in our contracts, because it usually we don't even get to that. It's like, in my 20 years, it's rare that we've ever even got to that point. But usually it's for good reason, and because someone's not doing what they say they're going to do, they're playing games. So same thing. So tell us about the. So you have been involved with City of Hope for a while, right?
Involved in to the extent of just it's a charity that's dear to me because of family issues that have happened over the years with cancer, and so my family's been involved with the City of Hope, and so it's just a charity that I think very, very highly of, and so we participate in something called the Breast Cancer Walk, which happens every year, and it's near and dear, so they do a lot of good stuff. And it's not just for breast cancer, it's for all kinds of cancers. And they are just out there leading the charge, along with others, because there's plenty of other charities and organizations that have the wherewithal to be able to do the research necessary to fight this terrible disease. But it's there, it needs to be fought, and so I just like to support it.
I think that's great. In fact, it's interesting because that's one of the charities that, since we started the podcast, that's probably one of, or at least like the top 2 or 3 that comes up the most. And so there's a lot of people behind that, and I've heard about it for years. That's definitely the one that I think about the most when I think about that kind of awareness and support, for sure.
Well, they've done a lot of good for a lot of people, and a lot of people I've known, and so continue to support them and suggest that to people I know, that if they can, help out.
I think that's great.